And what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. The U.S. men's national team has just finished up their friendlies heading into Copa America next week. It's time to break down their performances and preview the upcoming group stage of Copa America. I'm Andrew, that's Connor, and this is your USMNT recap. Connor, thank you for finally figuring out technology and how to press a power button. Glad you're
Hey,
here.
listen, I did not hit a power button, so maybe that was the problem.
We've been trying to get this recording started for like 45 minutes and everything's always, oh, I got this to do. I got that to do. For anybody wondering why everything's so difficult with the designated players, there are only two of us here. One of us isn't a problem. The other one's Connor.
I had to finish my notes. I can't come unprepared. And then I had to restart my computer because it was moving at like a frame a minute.
It's interesting now that Connor is the one who doesn't want to be unprepared after seeing all the comments about his garbage take on Aiden Morris move to Middlesbrough.
It's bold of you to think that I look at comments.
Let's go ahead and read them out just so
I
that he knows what is going on.
don't have time for that.
That's okay. I've got plenty of time.
Oh my God,
Let's see.
this guy.
Guy on the left is clueless. Guy on the right knows more stuff.
Mm-hmm. Your burner account?
Somebody says the championship is very better than MLS. Wayne Burnett, that sounds pretty English to me. Uh, Guy on left knows nothing about Boro or championship in general. And then a bunch of ones saying that it's actually a good move. So
Okay.
nice. See, these are the comments I'm here for. The ones that tell me I know ball and Connor
Mm-hmm.
does not.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can win them back over if you got a pretty cool scarf today. Let's see what you got.
I don't have a USA scarf, so
I still can't believe that, by the way.
the
We've been doing
best
this for
thing,
5 years.
they're expensive. The best thing I could do is try to piss them off even more. So I brought out the Nashville scarf in honor of Shaq Moore making the team.
Yeah, let's win them back. I had a bad take before. Let me win them back. Bang, here's a scarf for the person that's getting the most hate right now. Love it. It's easy to do that sort of stuff when you don't worry about when you don't work the social media side of it, seeing all the comments. It's easy to be the hated guy. That's why
Somebody's
I
got to bring
love
in
when
the
people
listen,
like
I'm bringing in the content. I'm bringing in the engagement. All right. Somebody's got to do it.
I love when people like will go after like Don Garber's Twitter comments. Like, you don't know anything. It's like, yeah, Don Garber's reading Twitter comments right now. Like, he even posted that. That's probably like a pre-scheduled tweet that's been scheduled for like a year.
He
You
probably
think
doesn't
he's
even know he
looking
has a Twitter account.
literally. I myself am not a loser, and I've got my USA scarf, one of the ones that I could find, One Nation, and then on the other side is Red Bull One Team. But we're only worried about the nation right now. So I figured today we review Colombia. We really I've got a lot of review on Colombia because I had a lot of conversations about it. We review the good bounce back game against Brazil, and then we preview the group stage. How's that sound?
Sounds like a good plan.
I usually come up with good ones.
Nah, you're hit or miss.
All right, so let's start with Colombia then. The U.S. men's national team lost the opening game of their slate of games 5-1 in what is probably the worst performance in recent USMNT history, or was it? Connor, I want to start it with you and let me know kind of what you thought about the game. I'm sure you watched all the 90 minutes and then watched the post game and then went on Twitter and read through all the comments, and I'm sure you got it all ready to go. So what do you got?
Oh yeah, pregame too. Like I was watching stuff on this like weeks in advance because I was just so excited. I mean, I think there's probably some part of it that is an over exaggeration, and there's probably a lot of part of it that is like valid criticism that people are making towards. I think a lot of it obviously is towards Greg. I mean, he will always have the criticism. He will always bear like the brunt of anything that goes wrong with the team. But I think there's just general like good criticism towards the team. Obviously, Colombia is a team that's in incredible form. I mean, unbeaten for like I think almost years at this point. Like I think it's spanned multiple seasons that they've been unbeaten now. So it's a very informed Colombia team and definitely not a team to sleep on. And I think the team came out flat-footed and got beat. I mean, they got beat tactically, they got beat just in ability. I know a lot of the talk was about the US having possession, 53% possession, it looks like. So more of the ball, not an incredible amount more, but Colombia still had way more shots, 15 shots, 7 big chances created. So even with less of the ball, they were able to do more. So just kind of saying a lot about the US having the ball and just not really doing anything with it. And again, that probably comes down to the tactical part of the game and why a lot of people I think have a justifiable reason for why they don't like Greg being in charge because this isn't the first time that something like this has happened. It's not the first time the US has seen a lot of the ball. It happens a lot when we play other CONCACAF teams because the US has so much more talent. They get the ball more often. And yet I feel like we watch so many games where this team is just unable to score goals. I mean, we saw with the last World Cup, the team was just incapable of scoring goals. And I feel like that was the result again here. The only difference was that normally we're pretty solid defensively, where in this case we got exploited constantly on the counter. So it was like a culmination of a lot of things going wrong at the same time, and it resulted in a really bad result on paper, and probably raises a lot of fair questions. But I do think at the same time it is just one game, and I want to be hopeful for the team heading into Copa America. So I want to say that hopefully this is a fluke result and that we get to see more results like we did in the Brazil game after this one.
I I agree with some of what you said, but not a ton of it. We talked in the group chat about the game a whole bunch. And even after 45 minutes and we were down 2-0, we all had this sort of feeling like it wasn't a good showing, right? We're losing the game, but it wasn't bad. Like it didn't feel bad, right? So I watched it back and tactically in the first half, we got picked apart in transition, right? But it didn't, they didn't hurt us on those chances. Maybe we get a little bit lucky. Sure, that's the game, but I think we had a bit of an over reliance on creation from wide play. And we talk about that all the time where I think he even came out at halftime after the game. He's like, yeah, we just need to work on being patient and crossing the ball more. Well, wide play is not one of those things where it's like, oh, if you do more of it, more good things will happen, right? Like that's not usually how that happens. So tactically, I can agree. In the first half, I think we struggled a little bit matching up, right? We had Florian Balogun in there who doesn't win the ball in the air very well against Davinson Sanchez and players like that who are very very strong. Our service wasn't that great either, to be completely truthful. And what we tried to do is keep the ball. We tried in possession to get our wingbacks high to create overloads in the wide areas. And then when we lost the ball, inevitably, because we either had a poor service or we didn't keep the ball well, we're now getting countered. Tactically, that was poor. Now, there's also, and you kind of mentioned it, this flip that, by the way, this is a friendly, right? We're trying to see what works and what doesn't. Quite clearly, that didn't work. That being said, even with it not working, up until 75 minutes, we were only down by a goal, and we had the better of the play for flows of the game, right? We created the first like 2 chances of the match. Florian Balogun had a shot from out wide, and I think like a half chance after that. Then we realized, okay, we're going to try and get into our defensive shape. We're going to try and sit into a 4-5-1 mid block. We're going to cut the space in between the lines, and we're going to try and force them to play out wide and deal with the service, right? Well, we get into this defensive shape. They find the ball into James Rodriguez, one of the first times they do it. He plays the ball through, and Jedi Robinson puts it right in the path of their striker, who reacts the fastest and tucks it away. We're down 1-0, right? Could we have changed our pressing shape? Maybe, but that's not really a tactic thing to me. That's a freak, whatever, right? But even after that play, right, we go down the other end, and Balogun gets in behind. He puts a shot on, it's cleared off the line. Like that thing bounces the right way. We're even again. Right. So it's not like we were completely at it. 5-1, I don't think tells us what that game was up until the very end. Did you have a feeling when we were watching the game like we were like screwed up until, the end of the game? Like up through the first half, did you feel okay?
I mean, considering it was 2-1 for 75 minutes, it's hard to say, like, especially when you have more of the ball and the score is 2-1. I don't necessarily feel like there would be a lot of situations where you feel like you're out of the game or you've been like completely run off the field. But then it was just like clearly at the end of the game, the last 15 or so minutes is kind of where like I think,
It falls apart.
yeah,
No,
the
for sure.
brakes
And,
kind
and
of
we're
fall.
gonna we're gonna get into that in a second. But like, then again, 19 minutes, we're trying to play out of the back. It's something Greg really likes to do, is play out of the back. And I think we can do it. We need to be better at it, but we can do it. We have the ability to do it. But they're trying to play out of the back. Tim Ream, who hasn't played in, 2-3 months before that first game because of injury and whatever, he gives the ball straight away. He has to recover. It goes out for a corner. Then on the corner kick, they go in and they score that crazy bicycle kick, right? Would Turner have done better? Sure. But again, you can put that on Greg's tactics of saying play out of the back. But the second we just start launching the ball high, right, who are we launching it to? Right? Everybody's like, oh, just play it direct. Who are we launching it to? Florian Balogun, Christian Pulisic, Gio Reyna? Which one of those guys is winning a header over any center back? None of them. Right? I mean, Pulisic, maybe he fights a little bit. Weston McKennie likes to win the ball in the air, but at the end of the day, that's not how this team is built to play. Right? We don't have a Peter Crouch up top just because I just listened to his podcast, the first name that came up in my head, right? A Christian Benteke, right? We don't have one of those guys who we can hit a long ball and target it to, so we have to play a different style. And I'm not saying that we can't go direct at times, right? We actually had success with that. Anthony Robinson would play in early to Balogun and Pulisic and stuff, but to do it every single time, teams are just going to sit in, wait for the long ball, win it back, and come down our throats, right? So you need to be able to have both sides of the game. And again, in a friendly like that, that's the time to try it out, especially against a team like Colombia or Brazil in that case, where these are the teams that you need to beat, right? We can go call Oman and Uzbekistan and play out of the back and look great. We can go do it against Belize and Nicaragua and look great. But that doesn't matter if we can't translate it to the big game. So you can work through those bumps, right? But again, to me, you can kind of put it on tactics a little bit. I don't blame those tactics, so to speak. But that's 2 goals conceded on 2 individual errors, right? The Jedi failed clearance and then the Tim Ream unable to play out of the back, right? Sure. But the U.S. had the better of the play towards the half, right? The ball was in Colombia's end, mostly Pulisic hit the post. Balogun had an opportunity inside the 6. Like, it wasn't like it was 2-0 and we're just sitting there absorbing pressure, like the second half of the Brazil game. Like, we played the game and we were very close to chances, right? So clearly something was working tactically.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can make the argument that like this is the time where you experiment with tactics
Right.
and you try out new things. But then like I also feel like people have a fair gripe when they talk about Greg's history when playing these teams that we need to be at the level of, where he just does not win these games. Like he just ever so rarely wins these games. So it's like, how many more different tactics are we going to try out and not work until we finally find one that does? Because like the World Cup was an example of it, and I think recent friendlies have been an example of it. But this team is just incapable of beating the level of opponent that we should be competing against. And it's not like we're getting the occasional win and then you have the couple of like one-off blowout games like Colombia, but it's just like the best that we're getting at is like a draw against England, a draw against Brazil. At what point are we taking that final step and winning these games? Because it feels like it is so far and few between.
No disagreements, and we're going to chat about that later. I have a little section about that too. But the reason why I keep going through this stuff is because, and we'll get to it when we get to the end of the game, because I'm going to kind of go through the rest of it here. But everybody at the end of the game is like, Greg lost this game. There are like 7 games in the past year you can say Greg's tactics lost us this game. Netherlands in the World Cup, Trinidad and Tobago in Nations League, right? Like those games, I think it was Nations League. Those games, those are the ones you're saying, yeah, Greg messed that up. He should not have been brought back. We know this. This game was not that game. This game had moments where we're in the game against a team that is equal on ranking. And again, I don't know how the United States are 11th in the world rankings. Like, that's absurd to me.
Because we win the Nations League, which is
I
like
would say, yeah,
for us.
and that's why I love these, like, oh, the rankings are like, it was the same thing when we played club soccer, right? Like, oh, we're going into the Long Island Cup and we're playing a team that's in the division below us, or we're going to tournaments and they're ranked on Got Soccer and 17 places higher than them. They're going to be tough. Or it's all just about how much you play and who you're playing and how many wins you're getting, right? So the rankings don't matter, but the fact that we know these teams are going to be good, they're the teams that we're going to have to get through in the Copa America. These are the games that, if you see good things happening, that's a building block. It's not this is garbage, right? Like, we get into the second half, and for 15 minutes the ball stayed in their end. They didn't even have a chance on the other end. Like, we dominated the first third of the second half and got a goal out of it. We had a bunch of really decent chances. We had a bunch of free kicks that turned into chances and Haji Wright nearly getting one. And then Tim Weah puts one away. Like for a good 15, 20, 25, 30 minutes across the whole game, we looked the better team, which was again not enough to be like, oh, great, bring Greg back on a lifetime contract. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you want to pick out where he's done poorly, this isn't the game to do it because here's where we get down to the end of it. After we score that goal, Colombia comes back down. They're like, all right, we're going to try and score again. And then every single goal they scored after that came because we decided we were going to just dribble out of the back, not play out of the back, dribble out of the back, right? And there's a difference between that. One of the biggest things I learned in college was a list of things you never do if you want to win a game. You never lose the ball on a one-touch pass. You're trying to play quickly. You never lose the ball turning in your own half if you can play negative and keep the ball. And you never, ever lose the ball dribbling out of the back. You cut those three things down, you have a good chance of winning the game. Here's how the last three goals were scored. Everybody's, heir to the number 6 position, Johnny Cardoso, picks up the ball after playing out of the back with two players in the press, and decides to just turn and dribble and dribble and dribble. And really, he wasn't even dribbling. He was walking. They come in from behind. They pick him off. We now have 2 defenders against 2 attackers, and we get scored on, right? That's the first goal. And not even counting that, there were 2 other times in the beginning before that goal where they hit us after turnovers. Jedi did the same thing, dribbling out of the back, got it picked off, and we got countered. Turner made a big save. Cameron Carter-Vickers couldn't trap a ball in possession with one person pressing the entire back 4. One person pressing. Couldn't do it, and they hit the post, right? So there are people who are saying, oh, we aren't good enough to play out of the back. Or we need to change our tactics because we're not good enough. If you have all these players who are playing in Europe and this is your level, it can't be MLS players, it has to be European players, and they can't trap a ball playing 4v1 in possession, it's not a system thing, it's a player thing, right? And that's what I was trying to get at when I go down this thing. The 4th goal, Tim Weah is moved to right back because we can't play Shaq Moore because he plays in MLS. Tim Weah would be clear. He picks the ball, he dribbles into the middle of the field, he loses the ball, and Colombia comes down the field and scores again. The 5th goal, Cameron Carter-Vickers playing at the top level in Scotland. He's so much more clear of Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman and anybody else. Picks up the ball, he passes the ball half speed into the midfield where Colombia step in, pick it off, come down the field and score again. You can blame those tactics, right? Oh, we shouldn't be playing out of the back. We shouldn't be doing, this stuff. We should just be playing direct and whatever. It's all Greg's fault. Absolutely. Go right ahead if you want to. But if that's the level that we have, no tactics are going to fix that. No tactics are going to be like, oh, we're going to make all these players better by just letting them go direct and not playing out of the back and playing a lower level. I don't believe that. Now, people can disagree with me, and that's fine. But I have been in the coaching game for a long, long time. Since I've been going on 15, 20 years now. There's not a thing you can convince me that if we have a system and it is play 4v1 out of the back and those players can't do it, that anything else makes this team good. I won't have it.
No, I think I think your point is valid. I do want to again reiterate that I fully believe that Greg is not the right person in charge, and that I still think that Greg probably had mistakes in this game. But that being said, I do think the players got off way too easy compared to the criticism that Greg gets, which again, I want to preface by saying I think it's valid criticism like 99% of the time, but the players, from what I at least saw, and again, this is like, I feel stupid even saying this, but like from what I saw on Twitter, like, because that should be the holy grail, really no players were getting any criticism other than like Matt Turner. I saw Turner maybe getting a little slack, but nobody else was getting criticism for the performance, where a number of players had really bad performances in this game. And I feel like it should be fair. I don't think we should harp too much on a single bad performance, but at the same time, I don't think it's unjust to call out a bad performance, even if it's your Lord and Savior or your favorite player in Europe, and the next guy up is an MLS guy, and you don't want to criticize him with the threat of the MLS guy coming in as the substitute. I still think it's fair to criticize them if they have a bad game. Like Chris Richards was the lowest rated starter on SofaScore, and again, Obviously, that's subjective, but still, he was the lowest rated starter on this entire out of the entire game. But I don't hear like anybody say anything about him or any of the other performances, like Cameron Carter-Vickers, like you talked about, who had the lowest rated performance out of the entire game, and he was a substitute. So
No, and I think that's a great way to put it, right? Like I'm not doing this whole thing to be like, oh, defend Greg. Greg's the guy. I'm doing this because it's stupid to look at something and then instantly, right? Like if this is the problem, right? We're losing 5-1 to big teams, right? And we're all just saying, oh, it's the manager who can't do it. If you bring in any other manager, it doesn't matter who it is. You can bring in you could pay triple Jesse Marsh's salary. You can go get Jose Mourinho. You could call Alex Ferguson out of retirement. You can go into a lab and take the brain of the best coaches in the last 100 years, put them all together and make the perfect manager. If Cameron Carter-Vickers can't trap a ball in possession 4v1, there's no getting back from that, right? Like, and so your point stands, and at a certain level, players need to be held accountable as well, right? And I think I told you this story before. Like somebody was telling me that they needed, it was Greg's fault because he couldn't get him up for the game. I don't believe that in the slightest. I know Greg came out and was like, oh, we didn't take them seriously, but I think people were saying, oh, Greg didn't prep them properly. I'm at Alfred last year. We have a game that we need to win to ensure the playoffs, and if not, we need a lot of things to go right. Right, we're right at the bottom. We need to get into the playoffs here. We need to win this game. It's away from home against the first place team. We've got history against them. We've gotten into fights with them. They've been all really close games. We prepped these guys for a week. Every session ended with a bit of history. Every session ended with you got to be focused, do everything right for the next week. We got off the bus. You know what they did for an hour? They played basketball and volleyball and were on their phones and did all the things that they shouldn't have done. We lost the game 4-0. We were down 4-0 in the first 20 minutes. You're going to sit here and tell me that's a coaching thing because we didn't get them up and ready? Of course not. And these are professionals, so they should be even at a higher level of self-accountability, right? Again, I'm not in here to say Greg's the guy, right? There are 100 different games to pick that this is proving that Greg isn't the guy. But this game particularly is a perfect example of why players need to be held accountable as well. Because if you look at Greg Berhalter being the problem here, then Tim Weah dribbling out of the back, Johnny Cardoso dribbling out of the back, Jedi Robinson dribbling out of the back, Cameron Carter-Vickers passing to the wrong player. Those problems don't get fixed if you don't hold those players accountable as well. And that's the whole point of this conversation, right? If you follow the progression of events that we just went through today, there are things that weren't great, right? We talked about the tactics, over-reliance of wide play, counterattack problems, sure. But you need to hold somebody else accountable as well. There needs to be a player who's held accountable. And and again, this is the problem why you can't just get all your news from Twitter, because if there was a single MLS player on the field, all of the hate goes towards that MLS player. But because there wasn't, and they can't talk poorly about their European players, it has to go directly to Greg. And now we're not actually finding the right answers. Now, luckily, I don't think the coaching staff is having that problem. I think they're able to pick apart the game properly. They've been trained properly to say, yeah, the problem is actually the fact that we can't break out of a 4v2 press because our guys are too lackadaisical. Again, unless he went up to the subs who are coming in like, yo, hey, Cameron, this is your chance to impress me, but you can't impress me if we have the ball the whole time. Give it to them four or five times and try and defend it. Let me see what you can do. If that was going to be his instruction, okay, fine. You're right. Then this is all Greg's fault. But I struggle to see how this particular game is on Greg Berhalter.
Well, I mean, it's not fully on him.
Yeah, that you're right. I should phrase it that way. He definitely played a part, right, in the beginning parts of the game as we talked about his tactics. But to just be like, oh yeah, nobody else is a problem and it's all Greg, and if Greg goes, all this goes away. It's not fully his fault, but he does share some blame for sure.
Yep.
Okay, that was my big rant because that was the big. I don't get involved in U.S. men's national team Twitter often, but when I do, it usually pops up, something like this where we can have a good conversation about it. So
I don't blame you for not getting involved in USMNT Twitter.
Dude, me and the guy who is from Pharma podcast from Nashville, we talked all the time. He's like, it's so hard to be a USMNT fan after any game because Twitter makes it unbearable to be on here. And I tweeted back, I'm like, dude, I literally need to like log off for 2 weeks when they're playing, and now there's a whole month of USMNT games. It's gonna be brutal. And he said something like, yeah, 2018 was a blessing, really, and we didn't have to watch them for a World Cup cycle. It was really nice.
Yeah, but then you just had to hear about it every time. Oh, this could have been us. Like
Yeah.
reminder that this is why we missed the World Cup. Or
Yeah.
well, you got like what is it? 6 more years before that could possibly happen again. Obviously, we're not hoping for that though. I'd rather deal with the annoying Twitter people and be in the World Cup than miss the World Cup.
Yeah, I agree. Let's move on to Brazil. Colombia was described as a wake-up call after the game, right? And it was clear that things needed to change to compete with a team that has the second best odds to win Copa America. I know people online were telling me, oh, they're not that good. They're only sixth in CONMEBOL qualifying. They got the second best odds to win Copa America. I don't care what they're doing. That means that this team is somebody that we cannot take lightly. And I know that people like to really rag on Greg and all the stuff, blame him for everything. But I think he got this game spot on. The response was really, really good. I'd like to hear your take on that.
I mean, if we're being honest, we had no business winning this game. I mean, yeah, you can make the argument that like, sure, tactically, he got a result out of a game that we had no business getting a result out of, and maybe you can give him credit for that. But 9 times out of 10, we're losing this game based on how that game plays out. I mean, I could see SofaScore has this like cool little attacking momentum chart that they have in there, and almost the entirety of the game is the chart is in Brazil's territory. So I mean, yes, the scoreline finishes 1-1, but if this is a game in Copa America, I mean, the reality is that Brazil probably beats us 9 times out of 10, and either, I mean, I guess in this case would knock us out because Brazil's not in the group, so it wouldn't be a group stage game. Um, and obviously you can make the argument that like Brazil is still at a level above even where we should be. Like Brazil is a whole different beast. It's a top 5 team and 99% out of the time, and they're completely stacked, and they have so many even like good young players coming through the system. And even where the US should be is probably still a level below that. And so to get a draw against them is a good result. And I think a lot of people were happy with it. I'm happy with it as well. But reality is we still weren't able to win the game, and we got outplayed by a lot. And realistically, if we replayed the game again, I think we'd probably lose. I mean, they had 25 shots compared to our 12. And Turner stood on his head. This is the only reason why it was 1-1.
Well, and people say that a lot, like, oh, this team wouldn't have won if it wasn't for the goalkeeper. There's a reason you put the goalkeeper in the team, so that he keeps the ball out of the net for the other team shooting, right? That's his job. So he did his job. He did well.
But that doesn't mean that he's going to be putting in this performance every single game.
No, were we lucky? Sure. I'm not saying that we bossed him, but we played really like that first half. We controlled the first half, right? So things that I noticed that changed, right? It was a wake up call. It needed some change. Pressing shape changed. Right, versus Colombia, it was like a 4-5-1 mid block. We talked about limiting the space between the lines. When they went into Brazil, they kept the 4-3-3 shape. Pulisic and Weah stayed higher. They put the back line under a bit more pressure, and they forced passes that Brazil didn't want to play. Right, pressing cues were more precise, and they went as a team. It wasn't individual pressing. It looked really good. They also limited their attacking. I guess what's the proper term for it? Right, like. They didn't try to get into that, in possession attacking shape as quickly, right? Where Robinson and Scally in this case bomb up the wings, and then you get overloads on the outside, and you're really playing with 2 center backs, the 6, and then everybody else is advanced, right? That didn't really happen. You saw them holding back a little bit more, which means that less moments in transition. The transition defense was better when it did happen, and they took less risks. They closed the space, and they defended well in the first half, right? They still tried to create chances through wide play, but it looked a lot less like they were just hitting hopeless crosses. And you saw people like Pulisic and Weah cutting inside more, combining with Gio Reyna finding the ball a bit deeper, which some people think that shouldn't happen because he needs to be higher on the field. It's where he makes more contributions. Depends on the game, right? You need your best players to find the ball. So if we're not getting it to him, let him find it. I mean, you already spoke a little bit about the performances, but did you know? I guess as a non-tactical kind of mind, for lack of a better term, like I'm not saying you don't know the game, but you see the game differently than I do. Did you notice the changes like this? Did you notice something different when you watched it?
Are you talking about like first half or second half? Or are you talking
No,
about
Colombia versus Brazil, like the things that changed to get the result that we had.
probably not to the level of detail that you're able to notice things at? I mean, I would think like obviously you could tell like if the team is playing more possession, if they want to play more counterattack. I don't think you need to be like a soccer specialist to understand that kind of stuff.
Right.
But in terms of like seeing certain runs happening or certain like link ups happening between players, I don't think that I would necessarily be able to spot that as easily. So that would probably be harder to tell. I mean, it's clear just based off possession numbers that it was a little bit of a different tactical approach this game versus Colombia, where Colombia we had more of the ball and we're the ones getting counterattacked, and in this case, we had less of the ball, and it seems like we're I don't want to say necessarily like counterattacking in the same way of Colombia, but doing more with less of the ball is kind of more, I think, the tactical approach against Brazil here.
All right. That's exactly the answer I wanted from you, like to see what you saw differently, but I phrased it really, really poorly. So I apologize for that. But
Oh, you're fine.
that's exactly what I was trying to ask you. Like, what did you see differently between the two? Which is great. Um, but yeah, again, we start on the front foot. We dominated the first half, right? We're on the front foot within 4 minutes.
I wouldn't say dominated the first half.
We absolutely dominated the first half.
No,
Yeah, we absolutely did.
I would disagree.
Okay. You're allowed.
They had more shots, more big chances, more passes,
That's okay.
more possession.
We looked better than them in the first half. That is what
I wouldn't necessarily disagree, but at the same time, if our level is here and Brazil's level is here, and we're doing better and they're doing worse, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're better.
I'm not saying we were better. I'm saying in the first 45, I thought we were the better team. The stats may tell you something differently, but to the eye test, we were the better team. Now,
Okay.
again, that's not a in the first 45 minutes, the ball never left their half and we dominated them. Right. But in the flow of the game.
You said the word dominated.
No. I'm saying in the flow of the game overall, right? What I'm saying is in the first 45 minutes, I'm not saying by the term dominate, I'm not saying we never let them out of their half and we crushed them like they were bullies in the Gold Cup. What I'm saying is over the span of the 45 minutes, though Brazil had their chances, we had ours. I think we were the better group. That's what I'm saying.
I would just say we were competitive then. I wouldn't necessarily say
we weren't. Yes, we were competitive, but we were better. Again,
okay.
Opinions, right? But
sure.
Again, in the first 4 minutes, Yunus Musa was millimeters away from scoring the goal of his life.
Yeah, but like he's not doing that.
I'm not done. I'm not
so
done.
we shouldn't rely on that.
Cutting me off.
I will cut you off.
Pulisic took over the game, right? Cutting in from the inside and creating many, many more chances. Working well with the combination of Brazil sitting in and thinking that they were going to play for counterattack. Brazil watched that game against Colombia, and you could tell they sat in and they were like, okay, we're gonna let those wingbacks get high. We're gonna time our press right. We're gonna win the ball, and then we're gonna attack open spaces. And we didn't let that happen because we changed the way we played, which was really, really good. I thought we were the better team for the first 15 minutes until Matt Turner decided to launch a ball upfield while we were playing out of the back, misses target, and then everybody was out of position during a counterattack. Right? That's the way I took that. Did you see the video that came out of the guy like videotaping his TV?
I don't know.
I'll send it to you as I talk about it, but I feel like we need to cover it because it's kind of ridiculous. So I'll describe it as you watch it, but you're going to want to keep it quiet. The guy yells a lot. So the video gets posted, and it's this guy videotaping his TV and screaming like, Berhalter is making them play back when we could have done a counterattack. What's he doing? We need to get this guy out because he's ruining the way we play the game. Anybody who watched that video, like who understands what's happening right in the game, knows that's not what he's doing, right? He's recording himself yelling at his TV that Berhalter's forcing him to play back when they want to go upfield. Ream receives the ball with a ton of space in front of him, right? He's looking to connect to his central midfielder or his number 9 checking in. Now, the problem is they both checked into the space at the same time, right? From there, you instantly don't want to play it because now you got two guys who are going to get in each other's way, and there are 5 different Brazilian players around them who are going to close that space and win the ball back, and then you get countered, right? So instead, he goes out to Jedi Robinson. His only 2 options are to play into Pepe, who again is surrounded by 3 different players and is you can see every one of them are like, please play him the ball because I want to step on him so hard and win that ball back. Or play it backwards and be patient, right? So they play it backwards as I'm watching it now on the side here. They play it backwards. It gets into Tim Ream's feet, and the entire back line is spread. The number 6 is coming in. It looks like a training exercise, right? That is the way I would train my group to say, when we get the ball at the goalkeeper's feet, this is the way we should look. Center backs wide, wing backs high, 6 comes into the space to create some extra balance, right? The problem is Brazil had stepped up higher, right? They closed the space a little bit, and possessing out of that would have been a little difficult. So Matt Turner decides, I'm going to go long. Sure, that's fine. He mishits the ball and it comes down the other way, right? If Turner just kicked the ball 4 feet over his head, this whole thing isn't even a conversation. But because in the one clip, after the players have already made the decision that, oh, I can't go forward here, otherwise I'm going to lose the ball, and Greg Berhalter says, hey, maybe look backwards, you have options there, it's like Greg Berhalter's ruining this team. And again, I'm not saying he's the Lord and Savior of the U.S. men's national team, but cherry picking stuff like this kills me. And this is why I can't be on USMNT Twitter. It just kills me.
I think it's a good summation of how like the Twitter USMNT fan usually will feel about games and Greg and nitpicking everything that goes wrong. I think everything gets watched through like or everything goes through like a fine-tooth comb. I think is I don't know if I'm saying the saying correctly, but yeah, I think I would also not necessarily blame that on Greg. I do think that's almost a factor of Turner not being a very good goalkeeper at playing the ball out of the back and playing with his feet. And I don't know how you can necessarily blame that on Greg in this case. I mean, Greg's not the one in goal kicking the ball.
Yeah. Well, and that's the whole thing. Like this guy, Zach Proctor, I'm just looking at comments here. He did a really good job that he was describing kind of what was going wrong. Just exactly what we just spoke about, right? Players checking into the wrong spaces, decision making on the time, and again, the goalkeeper gets the ball and the movement, the movement too after he gets the ball the second time is very lackluster, right? You're not seeing players check into space. You're not seeing players try and get into open areas, and they're just letting Brazil cut all the passing lanes. So at that point, you really don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's also fair too. That's fair.
So again, I'm looking at this. I'm not out here saying like I could be the next U.S. men's national team coach because I can break down a clip like this. But anybody who can break down a clip like this can discern the difference between a coach who is doing too much and a coach who is just trying to give different tips, right? Again, Greg probably doesn't do I think Greg's on the other side of not doing enough. He keeps it almost too simple at times. That clip is not a Greg Berhalter is ruining this team clip, right? You can go through any of the 4, 5, 6, 7 bad losses we've had in the last year, and you can pick out clips like that actually show what you're trying to show here.
Yeah.
But again, from that point, the game slows down a bit, but USMNT still feels like they're in it. They're controlling some of the game, not all of it. There's a counter attack chance from Brazil, probably because we failed to play out of the back. And then the Pulisic free kick that levels the game, right? You don't hit them better than that. After the first half, I'm sitting here thinking, man, we look really good. Mm-hmm. Again, I understand this isn't the Brazil of old, right? This isn't the Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Neymar. I know they all didn't play at the same time, but like those sorts of players weren't at that level, and I get that. But we're also not at that level. We need to accept that. I think that we are not at the level of those sorts of teams, meaning that this is still a good performance for us. And then the second half happened, right? And you mentioned it already, I think, about the heat maps and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, the second half attacking momentum chart has like 6 bars in the US's favor. I almost want to say it's a bar per minute or something like that. and then every other bar is in Brazil's half. Like it was just very clearly fully dominated by Brazil. Um,
Correct.
I mean, and to your point, if the first half, which I'm not saying the first half is a bad first half. It seems to be like it was more a bit more back and forth. I mean, certainly compared to the second half, but if you're gonna like come into the locker room and be like, all right, we had a good first half, we're coming in level, like we're going back and forth, we're getting our chances. I don't know why you don't stick with that in the second half or like tweak it so that you can continue to push. Like it's a friendly. Why are we just like sitting in and absorbing pressure the entire second half and not like doing anything unless you're saying that like Brazil just played the second half like perfectly except for just putting the ball in the net and didn't give like the US any opportunities to have like any sort of momentum. But like it's a friendly. Like what are we holding out for a 1-1 result for a friendly? Like why not try to go for the win? Test things out, like you said. Like that was the whole point of the Colombia game, test things out. I mean, I kind of get it from like Craig's perspective because if this game was also like 5-1, I'm sure they would literally never hear the end of it, regardless of whether or not it was just like late goals padding the score line. But I wish there was a bit more to the like attacking momentum in the second half. Like they had 17 shots in the second half. That's crazy. 17 shots in a half.
Yep. And we tried to counter a little bit and it was okay. But really they just absorbed for 45 minutes. Right. It was an onslaught. It had a lot of missed chances, right? If this Brazil's team is on form, if they have player, I don't know if they were missing a couple, Neymar being hurt, missing Everton legend Richarlison probably didn't help them either. Sorry, did I slide that in there? Like I said, different players probably make this a different story. You're right. 9 out of 10 times we don't even tie this game, we lose this game. And I'm not disagreeing with you there. Right. But the thing I take from this is the fact that for 45 minutes, we had to absolutely mentally grind to get this result. Right. Redemption of Matt Turner after a poor first half, giving the ball away for the goal, as well as a not so good, Colombia game. Right. He needed a half to show us. I think I mentioned it in the group. I was like, I am not sure about Matt Turner. Like, I don't know if he's the guy. I don't know, what he, if somebody else can do better than him. He proved me wrong in that second half, right? He is massive. And again, that's not to say that the US didn't have chance of their own, right? The Pulisic chance around 70 minutes, Allison did really well to keep that out on a counterattack. And then the Aronson chance late in the game that could have gone in and changed the game, right? It ends 1-1, and everybody's like, oh, we got lucky because Matt Turner made 10 saves. Yeah, yeah. But we also hit the bar. Pulisic had a chance that he probably should have tucked away that missed. Aronson should have put his chance away. And then Pulisic also missed 90 minutes. He missed the post by a couple of inches. So it's not like saying we got thoroughly outplayed. We got outplayed, right? You know, I maybe I'm an optimist, right? Maybe I take the most of everything and take the positives over the negative because that's how I was raised as a player, right? You're always going to have goods and bads, but if you only focus on the bads, then you're never going to be able to work on the goods or keep the goods, right? So I like to find the goods in the sea of bad, right? Because I'm not out here saying that these are perfect results. There are obviously problems, right? And we're going to talk about that in the next section of what we're kind of worried about here. But these are exercises against top opponents who showed the best of what we might go up against in Copa America. It highlighted our tactical issues, which is what we needed against good teams. We found some strengths. We highlighted some players who maybe might not be up for the challenge next week, right? Maybe these guys have gone from the third, the first guy off the bench in their position, and maybe the second or third, right? But regardless of results, there are good things to take away from this as well as the bads. And I think that's the problem I have with people who watch these games is all they worry about are the bad. It's like, oh my God, if we don't get Greg out right now, nothing's ever going to get better. There are goods in this too, right? You need to be able to take and enjoy them too. Because if you're just watching a game and a team just to be miserable and complain for 90 minutes, sort of life is that, man. I enjoy the game. I like to watch it and enjoy the good parts of it. I will feel bad about the bad parts. Don't get me wrong. I'll be upset about it. The 5-1 loss didn't, I didn't come out and be like, oh yeah, 5-1 and we scored a goal. No shit. but at the end of the day, there are still goods and bads from everything. You need to be able to balance and analyze them all from a coaching standpoint, right? Right, the coaching staff, but also as a fan, like, yeah, you can go around and be like, okay, we lost, but if we come back and then we tie Brazil, don't come at me and be like, oh, Brazil aren't even that good or anything. You're not allowed to enjoy this. End of the day, it's a game, guys. Relax.
I mean, there's only so much good and bad you can analyze before you just have to focus on the end result. Because like if we're in Copa America and we get out of the group stage, you go into the first knockout, you could play as great as you want. If you lose that game in penalties or you just flat out lose that game, no matter how good you played, at the end of the day, that's extremely disappointing. It doesn't matter if we dominated the game. It doesn't matter if we looked like second half Brazil against us. If we lose that game, that's extremely disappointing. And it's a knock against the team and the coach. So, like, yes, I get it. You want to like focus on good things and have a little bit of encouragement and something to look forward to. But I also don't think like I think we have to address the issue of this team like not being able to win these games against opponents that we need to be able to beat. These are the level of teams that we need to be competing against both in Copa America and in the 2026 World Cup. Like if we want to finally like get past that hurdle of the round of 16 in the World Cup, or I don't know what the new thing is going to look like now with the new format of the World Cup, but whatever it is, if we want to advance deep into the World Cup, we're going to have to eventually start beating these teams. And we've just shown like, even if we have good moments against these teams, we've shown incapable of getting the final score line.
Mr. Wright, that is such a good transition into my last point here.
That's because I'm reading your notes right now.
I figured you've hacked into my computer somehow. Yeah, that's what you were doing.
I do that often. I often
restarting your computer.
Uh-huh. When I'm typing my notes, I'm actually just copying and pasting yours.
Listen, what I want to do is take that good and bad, and I want to kind of talk about what we, before we preview the teams that we're going up against, like what good and bad did we take from this, right? Tim Tillman's been left off the roster. We're at 26 total players, which is funny because we spent 2 full days complaining about Tim Tillman being on the team. He didn't play a single minute and he got sent home. So I'm glad everybody's energy was directed towards the correct things. But let's preview Copa America and maybe the good first, the bad, and then things that you might still be worried about. And we've hit on them already a little bit, but maybe we go a bit more in depth. And then we'll chat about our opponents. So give me something good that you enjoyed watching here.
Like from the last couple of friendlies, or just
from this camp of 2 friendlies. What good did you take out of this?
Okay, I'll go with 2 good things that I took out of this.
I've got 2 good things too.
While Matt Turner isn't the best at playing the ball out with his feet, he has proven that he can be an elite shot stopper. Like, but this is what we knew ahead of time about him. Like, even when he was with the Revs and when he first moved over to Arsenal, the guy is an amazing shot stopper. So, second half against Brazil, that's where we saw prime Matt Turner. Like, that's the Matt Turner. That's like the best form of Matt Turner, where he doesn't have to worry about like playing it out of the back. Like his only job is just to keep the ball out of the net. And he does it super, super well. And it's something that, I think it's a really encouraging performance heading into the tournament. Hopefully we can give him some momentum and some confidence going into it. So I'm excited for that. The second thing, Christian Pulisic is an absolute baller. I understand that there's been like a number of poor performances across the 2 games, but Pooley constantly shows up for this team, and he is so like clutch for the team. And I know his goal wasn't late in the game, but still, like to score the free kick, and I think he had one of the better games against Colombia. I think he had a really, really good game against Brazil, and that's nothing new for him. He knows how to play well. He knows how to play in big games, both at club and at country level. And I have like the utmost confidence in him showing up in any of the games of Copa America and being a good leader for this team. When I say leader, I mean like captain if Tyler Adams is not ready to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think one of my points too was you saw players like Pulisic, Turner, Weston McKennie, and I'll even throw Joe Scally in there. I thought Joe Scally did well. I know in the group chat I was like, oh, I don't know about him. I've changed my opinion on him for the moment. I think he's done well enough where we can be comfortable with him.
We don't have a choice.
And that was my thing is like, oh, I don't know about him because that's going to be our weak point. I think he did. I watched back more of the game than I usually do, and I was like, okay, you know what? He held his own way more. The times that he didn't hold his own stood out to me like, oh man, red flag, red flag. But there were so many other ones that like, oh, that's actually pretty good. Um, those guys are in great form. They're ready to get after it. And that's what you need. You need some of those players to just be beacons of light for the other players around and be like, okay, if he's going to go like that, I'm going to follow. The other thing that I really enjoyed was that, and I mentioned it before, that when they go up against the best, they're finding ways to grind out a result like they did against Brazil, right? Does it mean that our goalkeeper is making 10 saves? Yeah. You know what? Other game that was a really high point in U.S. men's soccer history? Belgium. And we lost that game. And Tim Howard made 16 saves and we were still in it. It is a builder. It's a builder, right? And I'm not saying that's the way we want to play every game. We don't want Matt Turner making 100 saves a game and keeping us in it and, just barely pulling out draws and stuff. But this team hasn't had one of those games in a long time against a legitimate opponent, right? Where they needed to grind out some sort of result against very, very talented players. That was important. We also learned a lot from these, right? We learned what happens if we let these players, try and play out of the back and then they get sloppy on the ball and we're going to open ourselves up. It snapped something in our brain that was like, oh, we need to be better because if we don't, we're going to get killed, right? This isn't playing against the likes of, Cuba and, we're allowed to do things like that and nobody's going to hurt us. That doesn't happen here, right? So those are some good things that came out of this. Now, my list of bad things is like 3 times as long. So this is my point where I'm saying I can see both sides, but I need to take good and bad out of it, right? And a lot of the bad stem from, well, not a lot of them, but some of them stem from Greg Berhalter. His tactics still stifle a lot of what we can do. His over-reliance on wide play makes us predictable and easy to defend against. His attacking formation leaves us suspect to counterattacks, which we don't transition well into. And the other part of that is the fact that we didn't change a lot of it there. And I'm going to get into my last section of the worries, and I'll kind of hint at it a little bit here. He's not very adaptable. He hasn't shown his adaptability yet. Well, I'll talk about that later, but that was one of my bad. Do you want to do 1 and 1 bad? How many bads you got?
I could probably go on for a while with bads, but I would say I wholeheartedly agree with you on the. I mean, I kind of talked about it before, but I wholeheartedly agree with you on the Berhalter part about just the teams. Like, I understand we have good moments and we have like some decent results against big teams, but we still have an inability to get the job done and win against these teams because in knockout stages, there's no ties. Like, you have to win. And I understand you can go to penalty shootouts, and I certainly back Matt Turner in a penalty shootout, but I would like to go and actually just win in regular time and not have to worry about going to penalty shootouts every time and having to like bunker down and have my goalkeeper make 15 saves a game just so we can try to get in the penalties and cross our fingers and hope he guesses the right way and we move on. Like, this team is capable of going deep into Copa America and beating these teams outright in regular time. But I agree with you that I think Greg's tactics hold them back in doing so. I just don't think his tactics work with the personnel that gets called into the national team. And I don't think the personnel, as much as they've made mistakes in the last couple of friendlies, is the problem. I think there's so much talent there that I think you surely have to say that it's a manager issue and not a player issue.
Yeah. That being said, I also think that the players are something that we need to focus on, right? There are way too many individual mistakes, right? I mentioned the never ever losing the ball dribbling out of the back, right? If you're trying to set up in possession and you lose the ball while you're dribbling or turning from that area, well, now you're screwed. You're getting countered and you're out of shape. That being said, that comes because we're playing too slow out of the back. I don't mind the desire to keep the ball and play through the lines. I think that's the way this team should play. We talked about why earlier in the show. And we know Matt Turner isn't strong with his feet, right? That is, we've seen that. But everybody else should have the technical capability to do that. If they're all playing in these big European teams and that's the way they play, like, that shouldn't be a problem. People who are like, oh, we can't do it, that, I don't buy that, right? That's not something I buy. So the intensity needs to be higher when you're playing out of the back. The movement needs to be crisper and more exact, right? And that Brazil goal was a prime example of it. We talked about it, right? The idea was right. We're playing out of the back. We're looking to find the high target. High target checks into the wrong space, and now we're in trouble. We don't know how to play out of it. Ideas right, examples poor.
I don't think I have something else specific in terms of bad. I mean, like obviously there's a lot of overarching like bad things. I think individual mistakes is something that has like consistently happened. The one thing I will say, and you could say that like, oh, it's you're playing in Europe, you should learn how to like play out of the back and all that stuff. But if the team is consistently not capable of doing so and is consistently making mistakes, then Greg needs to come up with another plan and stop playing it out of the back. And I'm not saying that needs to be like route one, send it deep every single time, because I don't think, like you said, we don't have a striker necessarily that's going to do that. Um, Certainly not with Balogun up front. But there needs to be some other game plan other than let's just continue to try to play it out of the back and just keep making mistakes. Like I understand you could say like normally these guys can do it, but maybe they just can't do it with this like group of guys out there. And if that's the case, you got to come up with something different rather than just sticking with it and hoping that it's going to all of a sudden just fix itself.
Yeah, you know, I've got a couple bads, but I'll work in my worry here because we keep talking about it, and I don't want to put it off to the end. You know, I have a worry, and the worry that I have is Greg's adaptability, right? In these friendlies, and we talked about it. You know, the results they still matter, but a lot less than in Copa America. You can stick with a game plan. You can try and work out the kinks. You can try and find the perfect system on the fly, and the result be what it be. But at least you learn something from it, right? You, as you mentioned, you can't lose in Copa America. You know, you can't play for draws and then hope for penalties or look for good for performances, and you need results, right? So how quickly is he gonna change, and how effective will he be at making those changes? That is a worry and something that I can file under the bad because he's not been good at it. But the other problem, and again, it's a player specific problem, is the fact that our center backs and our number nines are, for the most part, not super locked in. Over the course of these two games, I don't think you can look at anybody on that roster and say, yep, you're my number nine. I'm happy with that. And I'm confident you will succeed when given the opportunity to do so. Right. When's the last time we scored a goal with a number nine?
I can look it up if you want
Yeah.
if there was more to your worries that you want to talk about.
Yeah. Please do so. Because the other problem, right? And I'll just list them off, right? Balogun's been poor. Pepe's not been much better. Sargent's hurt. Haji Wright is playing more as a winger right now than as a number nine, right? The other problem is the center backs haven't been great. I think Chris Richards showed really poorly in these two games, and I think you mentioned he was one of the lowest rated players in one of the games, and he didn't look super impressive in the other game. So that's a problem for me, right? Tim Ream has been better. He's grown into the game a little bit, but he's still 36, right? He's a little bit slower to react. If we're playing in transition, they're going to be caught out and they're going to be hurt. So there are some problem areas in this team that I worry about, as well as Greg's adaptability to say, okay, here's a problem. How do we fix it? That is going to be a big focus of this group game, these group games.
By the way, for
Yep.
number nine goals, if you're counting Haji, which I believe he was playing as the number nine in this, 2 goals against Jamaica in the semifinals of the Nations League in extra time. Actually, was he a number nine in that case?
If we're not counting Haji,
No, actually, I don't know if he was a nine because Pepe was on. I think Haji was a winger.
okay. If we're not counting Haji,
Then Pepe against Trinidad and Tobago, first leg.
so
And
we've
then
got. Go ahead.
yeah, that was back in November
Yeah.
of 23. And then if you want to know Balogun, he hasn't scored since Ghana in October of 23.
So we've gone.
So it's been a long time.
So we've gone what? That's 9, 18, 27, 36, 45. So we've gone almost 500 minutes in scoring with a number nine, give or take.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, our
That's my
number
point.
nine play has been poor.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? We still don't have that lockdown, and that's a problem. And really, you're
I
not
almost
fixing that today.
I almost wonder at what point you start to point the finger at somebody else. Because it's like, how can you have so many guys come in and every single one of them not pan out?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you have guys like PFOC, right, who torched it up in the leagues. He was great for young boys, and then he moved to Berlin. And I remember he played against Mexico or something. My buddy was watching because I think it was like the Nations League final or semifinal or friendly or whatever. And he's like, that guy you put at the number 9 is the worst striker I've ever seen. I'm like, dude, he's the leading goal scorer in Switzerland right now. I don't know what happens, but you put on the USMNT kit and they just can't
Just don't
play.
know how to play.
And again, that you can point that to Berhalter too, because they might not be getting as much service or might not be involved as much. That's something I have to dive a little bit deeper into. But again, that can be pointed over there as well. But again, this group stage is going to be really important for us to get our feet wet and get settled first. So why don't we preview that to wrap this thing off and see where we're going, because we start off with the 85th ranked team in the world, currently 9th out of 10 in World Cup qualifying of CONMEBOL, with only a 1 win in 6 games. It is Bolivia. According to the Athletic article, which outlined every team, they've got a weak back line. They've conceded 14 goals in 6 games. They've only scored 4 in that time. They have a couple of good individual players, but they don't gel together, especially in the back line. They're very disjointed. Their leading goal scorer, Marcelo Martins Moreno, retired this year, and their 2 replacements have only scored 4 times in their combined national team career. Thoughts on the Bolivia game? What should we do here?
I mean, if the US doesn't win this game, that's an unmeasurable disappointment. But at the same time, if there's one thing the US loves to do, it's play down to their opponent's level. So I would not be surprised if this is not an easy game, and we make this look way more difficult than it needs to be. But I can't see any world in which the US doesn't take 3 points out of this. And if there is a world where they don't take 3 points out of this, then there's going to be the biggest target on Greg's back, or there should be at least.
Correct. Well, and that's what I said. I think, especially after that series of games that we just had, I think this is the perfect first game for us to get our feet under us, build confidence in front of a home. Like, I don't want to sound, what's the word? Insensitive here. I don't think there are going to be as many Bolivian fans in the United States as there were Colombians and Mexicans or Brazilians. I don't think the Bolivians are going to be out in huge numbers. So you go out against Bolivia, you put a couple goals in front of a home crowd, you get really, really motivated. You get an understanding of what your level is. I think it's a great first game. That being said, if we don't pick up 3 points convincingly, even if it's a struggle, I don't care if they're sitting 100 people behind the ball and they put 4 subs on without knowing. Yeah, there's a problem there, and that's a conversation to have for another day.
Yep.
That being said, after that, things get a little bit harder as we go to play Panama, which is a little bit tougher than people would expect. They've got a really impressive coach in Thomas Christensen, who is very clear and concise with the style that they play. They're a counterattack team in a 4-3-3 shape, and they are 45th in the world, and currently they're in second place in their World Cup qualifying group, tied with Nicaragua on 6 points through 2 games and only 1 goal against. They know how to play. They're going to attack, like I mentioned, on the counter. They're going to sit in. But what they gain in structure and identity, they lack in talent and firepower. Of the 3 strikers, 2 of them play in Chile and 1 in the Ukrainian league, who is leading his team in goal scoring at 13 goals through 33 games. They have some experienced MLS players like Anibal Godoy, some proven wide players like Michael Amir Murillo, former Red Bull, and currently who cares where he's at because no one's better than Red Bull. He's in France. And an up-and-coming breakout star like Coco Carrasquilla. If you can contain Coco, you probably contain the rest of the group, but that's easier said than done. Your thoughts on the Panama game?
Last time we faced Canada, we lost on penalties in the Gold Cup.
Try again.
What?
You said Canada?
I said Panama.
I heard Canada on my end. I'm like, whoa. Hold
You're
on a
hearing
second.
things, old man.
What?
Last time we faced Panama
There you go.
was the Gold Cup where we lost in the, I think, semis in penalties. This needs to be a revenge game for that. I know most of those guys weren't on. Most of the guys that lost in that game are not on this team. However, we should be significantly better than Panama. So I don't care what they could have a great coach and whatever and have a good system. This needs to also be 3 points. They need to come out. They need to take 3 points from here. They need to get 6 and then just lock it in from there. Lock in your spot in the knockout rounds immediately, right here, right now. Don't leave it to playing against Uruguay. It is a disaster waiting to happen. We should be better than Panama, and we need to show that. I'm tired of seeing our team play down to a lesser level against CONCACAF opponents. And that's ultimately what got us third in World Cup qualifying last window. So I definitely think we need to take 3 points. Like this is a game where we are the clear better team and we need to show that.
Yeah, listen, that's a really good description of that, right? This was the Gold Cup. It was our C team minus Matt Turner, Miles Robinson, and apparently Sean Johnson. So, yeah, 100%, right? I'm looking at their group. They have pretty much, for the most part, a similar layout of players, give or take one or two. So, the level for them should stay relatively the same, maybe a little bit higher, where ours should make a significant jump. Now, again, the one thing I'll say, and Bolivia may do this as well, Greg has shown that he has struggled breaking down a low block, right? Trinidad, Panama, those games where teams are like, all right, screw it, I'm going to sit in and make you beat us, usually don't go well for us. So, I think it'll be a bigger struggle than people will play off, but I agree with you on what it should be. Because if you take 6 points, theoretically, you should be sitting pretty come game 3.
Oh, well, you'd almost certainly be in the knockouts at that point,
Yeah,
unless
you
there
would
was some
assume.
freak result against Uruguay.
Yeah. So, I think it'll be more difficult than people think, but I do expect our quality to shine through. And again, hopefully Greg is a little bit more flexible if we're playing, my hope is that he's going to train to play against the low block. My hope is that he's going to be able to understand, okay, this team sits in, they're going to play a 4-5-1. We're going to have plenty of possession in the back, just be able to trap the ball and move it. And then again, when we play low blocks, it's, interchange, short, long diagonal to 1v1s with Pulisic or Weah, right? That's the way we usually try to break it down. Is that the other way? I don't know. But I hope there is some plan to do that because that is going to be a struggle for us. Now, finally, the United States takes on the powerhouses of our group, Uruguay, who were bounced early from 2022, looking for a bit of a revenge tournament. But they've got 2 more years of experience under them and a very, very good head coach in Marcelo Bielsa. You've got players like Valverde, Suarez, and Punez, Parwin Punez. Former MLS star Brian Rodriguez also is in that group. And they are a very, very scary attacking lineup. They are second in CONMEBOL World Cup qualifying behind Argentina on 13 points. They're 15th in the world. Somehow they're behind us. Again, I don't get it. But this is going to be the toughest test, no doubt. If you can sit, like we mentioned, and pick up 6 points against the other 2 teams, you should be able to make this game just a placement game, right? Who's first, who's second into the knockout rounds and move on from there.
Yeah, I personally think we need to get the 6 points before this game because not to be too pessimistic, but I think Uruguay has the capability to run this team into the ground. They're in great form, and I think they can generate chances just like Brazil did. The only difference is they actually have a legitimate number 9, whereas Brazil did not. And so considering they have somebody who can put away chances and has consistently been absolutely blitzing the goal scoring in recent games for Uruguay. I believe he has scored in the last like 3 or 4 World Cup qualifying games and then scored a hat trick against Mexico. I would suspect he would come in very, very good form and has the potential to absolutely wreak havoc on our team, especially for making mistakes. So I'd rather not leave it to that scenario, even though the U.S. does a pretty good job of playing up to their opponents' levels and stepping up in some of the big games. So I'd rather us just take the 6 points and whatever happens in this game happens. And hopefully we can get something out of it. But if we don't, then I don't want it to be left up to whatever the result is from Panama, Bolivia.
Listen, all I'm saying is the last time we played Uruguay in 2022, I don't know if we need to do some last minute changes, but our center back pairing that put a goose egg up, Walker Zimmerman, Aaron Long. I'm not trying to suggest anything, but
Is it too
Listen,
late to make changes?
I don't know. I'm sure that the Copa America committee can make an exception for our king Aaron Long.
Well, Walker Zimmerman's in Paris, or he's at the Olympics,
Yeah.
so we
Well,
can't.
he's going to go
We
to the
could bring
Olympics. Yeah.
Aaron Long's available.
I'll
That's
say,
all I'm
listen,
saying.
and who wouldn't want to see Aaron Long against Uruguay again? I know I myself would love to.
Maybe you can even win over the Euro snobs if you tell them we'll bring back John Brooks, but his partner has to be Aaron Long.
Well,
Let's see what they think about that.
that's the train probably that's the trolley problem for USMNT fans. Pull the lever. You either get John Brooks and Aaron Long, or you get Walker Zimmerman and Chris Richards.
Pick your poison.
Oh, that's funny. Listen, I think this is a good group for us. I think we should be able to advance through here. You know, they will be able to play their style in the first few games. They're going to be able to get used to playing with each other again, and then they're going to head into the knockout rounds against most likely Brazil or Colombia in the opposing Group D. So again, not a bad thing that we went up and saw what we can do against them and how they play. So that'll be an interesting chess match if and when we get there. Predictions. What do you think? Do a little prediction thing here.
I'm gonna say second in the group. I mean, if you want the full group list, I think I'll go with the obvious one. I think it's gonna be Uruguay 1, USA 2, Panama 3, Bolivia 4. But if we get anything outside of second in this group, I'm sorry, but Greg needs to be so far gone from this team. This is literally like, I will say it now because I want it to be true, and if it's wrong, then people can feel free to make fun of me for it. But this should be a cakewalk of a group for the U.S. Like in terms of getting out of the group, this should be a cakewalk. They should absolutely in no way, shape, or form knock it out of this group. And if you don't, then that's an unbelievable failure, almost to the level of like 2018 missing the World Cup.
I'll be sure to clip it and use it as a as our leading clip.
Go for it.
Listen, you took the words right out of my mouth, right? I think first or second is a lock. Dad would freak out if I said that. He hates talking about locks. Oh, you know who else was in the group against Uruguay? DeAndre Yedlin. Call him up. Jesus Ferreira led the
Available.
line. Call him up.
Also available.
No, but on a serious note, yeah, the first or second has to be. If not, right, we talked about what does Greg need to stick around for the World Cup? You need to get out of this group and you need to beat Brazil or Colombia and get into the semis. If you don't, there are questions that need to be had, I think. So
Yeah, I agree with you, but there's a part of me that feels like he's gonna get out of the group, lose to Brazil or Colombia, and then the federation is just gonna be like, it's Brazil. Like, what are you supposed to do? Like, we still back Greg for 26.
again, I think you took the words out of my mouth. It's what we want, but is it going to happen? Probably not. Who is who's going to take over the team? Again, that's a conversation for another day. But thanks so much, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you go and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. When our next episode goes live, we're doing a little bit of history for Wednesday, and then we will be doing a mid-season recap for our MLS season coming up, and giving some impressive performers, some underperformers, good teams, bad teams, and then our mid-season awards. So make sure you go follow us for that. Follow us on social media so you can see our clips and things like that, and interact with us. YouTube, TikTok, Twitter. That's where we're most active. Really enjoyed having you here today, listening to our thoughts, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.